Welcome to Monsters and Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Elioti,
I'm Jared Bornigal.
And I'm Will Meldon.
and on this episode, we are doing a Bard retrospective, similar to our other retrospectives if you've seen them. So we will take a look at what a Bard is, where they started in 5th edition, what they did through the ages, it's the past 7 years, however long 5th edition's been out, and what we like to see in the future. And for this time, we brought along some help, Zip from Zipperon Disney. Say hi, Zip. Tell us about yourself.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive into the Bard, its history, and where it's going, and also bring some insight into maybe my interpretation or my variant of it. I am a YouTuber most famous for my channel, Zipperon Disney, where I go over advanced dungeon master techniques. Rather than go top 10 spells or deadliest monsters, my channel is focused on narrative design, game design, and it's for people who really want to take their skills to the next level, talking about rare or esoteric topics. I am also an RPG publisher, and the Bard we're going to be going over is found in my book, Galder's Gazetteer, where it's one of a dozen variant classes, and all the proceeds from the book go to the Cancer Research Institute, link below.
Definitely link below. You can say that for any link too, and Ellie has to do it. That's just a fact.
It's the law, yeah.
I even said I was going to do that ahead of time, so like an ambush right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or I could just cut it out saying that.
Oh no, we're not live. That's right.
And the power of the editor. All right. So then, with that said, thank you so much for joining. I've been a fan of your channel for quite some time here, so it's good to get you on and get you talking about something. So, this is it. I think I offered up to you originally monks, and you were like, nah, I don't want to talk about monks. I want to talk about bards. So you better bring it.
Yeah, well, let's go.
All right, so
lead
first
the way.
You start off with just kind of what the concept of a bard is and what it means to us, what it means to the community, and generally what we hear. I mean, I know there's always the jokes of the horny bard, which of course brings up specific imagery of what people have of their character ideas, but there's so much more to that. So let's start with Will. Haven't heard anything from you. What does a bard mean to you?
Just, it's a worse version of warlocks to me.
You just say that about everything, though. You say that about paladins. You say that about wizards. Yeah. All right.
Basically.
All right. Well, Ellie, what do you feel about bards?
All right. I love the Bard. It's actually my favorite class. I need to get away from playing them because I play them too much in 5th edition. I very classically, either they bring their power through music, but I like how it doesn't have to be that. Generally, sort of any sort of performance, oration, just strong silver tongue, anything like that. And according to the official lore within the player handbook, they pull their power from the Song of Creation. They think those words echo through time, and they could tap into it through their musical instruments, through their poems, through the performances, whatever it is. And they're a jack of all trades. They're a versatile class. They full spellcasters with a ton of utility and supports, but could also hold their own in combat depending on how you want to play them. They're great. I love bards.
And Zip, what's a bard mean to you?
Well, it means a lot of different things. We can talk about how I initially came to view bards in fantasy and how I initially approached them, what I know about the history of bards and how they progress through the game, or what I think about bards in 5th edition. What I think about bards in 5th edition is, they have a very strong case for being the best class, right? Full caster, best support character, and really, really clutch abilities all the time.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was actually kind of interesting is when I was doing a bit of research for this, I just looked up general community thoughts about the bard. There's a lot of stuff that was bards are ranked 6th or lower in terms of the best class, which is, I'm never going to trust a list. I would never trust a list that says the best or worst class. It means nothing. But the idea of saying that it's 6th or lower, putting it 9th or whatever, it's I feel like we've played entirely different classes. The all-around abilities of the bard are just, they can almost be overwhelming. And a lot of times they can almost feel too strong in 5th edition. The only thing that they lack is single target damage, which isn't everything in this game by any means. Say they're able to create a bunch of different character concepts. You can be the spy, you can be the traveling minstrel, you can be so many different things in this one class and fill so many different roles depending on either what your party needs or just what you want to do. And I feel like it's hard to make a bad bard. So it was interesting to me to see that anybody would say that they're anything other than good.
I mean, just mechanics aside, they fill a very strong role in the story of the world, right? I think people know, for better or worse, what a bard is and where it belongs in this, sort of vanilla general fantasy setting. We have this idea. We know they're supposed to be the comic relief. They're supposed to be the ones who carry lore around, and so I think they're supposed to be the actors, the minstrels, the musicians, what have you. And I think that carries a lot of weight for the class too. I think that does a lot of lifting about how people play the class and what sort of things they can expect from it.
Yeah, and you were mentioning kind of more the like general history of the class. I know that they originally came around in first edition, and it was kind of hilarious how you could even become a bard. If I'm getting it right, you had to take 5 levels in fighter and then 5 levels in rogue, but like no more than 5, because if it was more than 5, you couldn't go into it. And then at that point, you had to also then go into cleric levels, specifically with a druidic focus. And then you were considered a bard.
Yeah, that whole chain of events had to happen, and you had to be neutral too. You couldn't be lawful.
Yeah, it'd be neutral, and your stats had to be kind of ridiculous. If I remember, it's like I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's like 15, 16, 19, and 15, and it's like that's your minimum that you need to have to be able to go into a bard.
My understanding, I don't have any reference for this. This could just be folklore. Is that Gaiax couldn't stand this idea, right? He liked, much more serious, much more grounded fantasy. And so this idea of having, people with like feathers in their caps who just played a lute and, sang songs, made magic happen, he thought was silly. And so he made it as hard as possible to get one of these things in the game. I don't know if that's true or not, but I believe it.
Yeah. I'm disappointed in his narrow-mindedness on it though, because it doesn't have to be that. They don't have to be the minstrels with the feathers who are like the schmoozy, drunk, horny bards. They could absolutely be like edgy, dark spies. Their performance that they pull their magic from could be the deception they do to the world. It doesn't. Well, you don't need to be the cheesy performers.
So you have to keep in mind we're also talking many, many moons ago. It's not like, right. Oh yes, our modern interpretation of it. Maybe that's all he experienced, and he had a lot of control over. I mean, again, it is potentially folklore, so I don't want to speak with any permanence.
Well, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, before we get into the folklore, I think what would be interesting is go back among how were you introduced to the bard? Search your memory, go back and say, okay, when was the first time this idea of a music player in a fantasy world with magic got introduced into your head? When was the first time you came across that concept?
Man, that's a really good question, but I hate to say it. I think the first time was actually at our D&D table with Ellie playing a bard for me personally, because it's not something that I can. It's not brought up in a lot of popular culture in the same way that anybody could say, oh, my first introduction of a fighter. It's like, that's a knight, that's basic.
Right. Or wizard.
Wizard, any of those. Even a paladin, I think you could search your mind and find a lot of examples. I don't think a bard is what I'd consider an extremely popular figure in the terms of somebody who plays music and magic happens because of that music.
I would say that is a lot less true today than it was when, say, I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. These days, it's getting kind of everywhere. Like the Witcher Netflix series, that's like a main character. So,
but
I
even
think that has
Jazetteer
changed a lot.
But
even Jazetteer isn't.
Magical,
yeah, he's not magical. He's just a bard.
Yeah, I mean, he still plays a support role. I guess maybe magical's
that's fair.
Too far of a qualifier.
Is he good at anything?
Jazetteer?
Adventuring wise, I haven't seen the second season, but
regardless of the show,
adventuring wise, he could sing, and that was about it.
In the books, he is a very good persuader. I mean, he's a silver tongue. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, so nowadays, I guess there are definitely more bards in pop culture. But I think I'm similar to my first real interaction with bards in sort of a medieval setting. Besides that Rooster and the Robin Hood cartoon.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, oh, what is in my mind? It's the rooster and the Robin.
And the one who sings about Sir Robin and Monty Python was probably in role-playing games. Like I played the Lord of the Rings role-playing game, and minstrels are classed there, and I thought that was kind of like strange. Like you're a person who plays an instrument, you don't have a bow or a sword. Like what are you doing? And then I think that the next thing was in the 3.5 or 3rd edition player's handbook, right? When they talk about what a bard is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I really only understand this, bard as an adventurer in the context of role-playing games.
I think that's the main thing. Like I've definitely ran into him in video games, a lot of CRPGs, but I think it's just pulling it out of D&D and other TTRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
I've also known him as the butt of the joke before 5th edition. Because I think in other editions, I played a little bit of 3.5. I'd never played a bard in that. I'd never seen anyone play a bard in that. For a little bit I did play. My understanding is they were pretty terrible, and I think it took a while for that reputation to improve.
Yeah.
You've seen this?
I don't think I've ever ran into a horny bard in real life. I think it's
I don't think I
only
have either.
ever through memes.
Yes, and that's just grown to such a large size that it's just I don't know. I don't think it actually happens. I'm sure it does. Obviously,
I'm sure
there's
it does. There's people who ban bards from their table because it's such a problem for them.
That's its different issue.
That's more like a talk to your player issue,
right?
But it is still.
One other example that I got up here is Chaucer from A Knight's Tale. Is anyone else super in love with that movie, or is it just
I
me?
just watched it again like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, so very relevant. So he is obviously not going to be your playing music bard, but he's exactly what I would think of if I was trying to put together an orator bard who is just can stand up on a table and can just get everybody to focus on them. And from that, I mean, to the extent that magic literally happens, like, yeah, I could definitely see that. So that's like, that is going to be my future go-to for like, what's a good example of a bard who doesn't play magic?
Yeah.
No, like the clown is a great archetype, right? Like it's a classic thing to have in storytelling. It definitely serves a purpose. And so that's why I think it fits nicely. It fits nicely in there. So I think pulling from folklore, our options are pretty limited, right? We know that there were bards in real life, or that's my English teacher, 9th grade English teacher was lying to me, right? They went around Scandinavia and pre-conquest England, and would play their songs and get bells for rewards and slept in mead halls and stuff.
What a life. That sounds cozy.
Right.
I think there are some myths of like Celtic bards like singing songs that would knit together the wounds of their allies.
Yes. Yeah, that's I think a lot where the original bard in like 1st and 2nd edition kind of got inspired from, or at least I think the terms for it as they got brought up a lot, the skalds. I think I'm saying that right. SKALD.
I don't know.
Skald.
It's a
skald. Yep.
Often named poets who compose skaldic poetry, one of the two kinds of Old Norse poetry. The other being Eddic poetry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's again more of the orator side, but
yeah.
So the archetype of a bard, as it found its way into Dungeons and Dragons, is sort of a loose mashup of all sorts of weird, different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially even like we get in 1st edition, they're supposed to be part fighter, right, and part rogue, because they have to be like sort of like sneaky thieves and not trustworthy. They're kind of rapscallions and scoundrels going from town to town, but they also learn some magic, right? Because apparently after enough time, your words become power. And I think that's really the big conceptual leap right here, right? That didn't necessarily need to be the case. They could have made this all mundane abilities, right? Like in A Knight's Tale, you just jump up on the table and spout a good speech, and for all practical purpose, magic does happen.
Right.
But they didn't. They decided to lean into this arcane element, which makes sense in a fantasy world. And I think that's a really great conceptual leap that I think is worthy of some appreciation right there.
Totally.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's how Fifth edition handles it. A lot of it has to deal with the revolving around the concept of the song of creation and pulling from that song of creation to obviously create more magic.
Mhm.
To some extent, I do think it's a little funny that I guess with the more they get described, the more I think about them, the more I'm like, the fact that they're a full caster always feels a bit weird to me. Like just from that concept of them just having power, of them being able to persuade people, and like more of a charismatic pull that I guess I'll probably end up getting into a little bit later here. But
Well, they weren't
I
always
could
full
almost
casters
see
in the history of the game.
until the second edition, basically from then on, they just hit the ground as full casters. So it was only first edition that they weren't.
Well, in third edition, they only ever get 6th level spells.
Oh, okay. So they had a cap.
Yeah, they're 2/3 casters in third edition.
Okay. That I didn't know,
Mhm.
as I didn't play third edition.
Yeah. And then so in fourth edition, in second edition, they really come out of this sort of, we're the jack of all trades class. You're going to get a little bit of it's sort of kept the idea of what it was in that weird prestige class thing, but it added all this other stuff. Okay, you get a little bit of everything. You have a huge, huge skill list. You can get some magic, and you can do some stuff that sort of, beguiles or charms creatures. It was sort of, well, we're going to have an illusionist wizard, but you're also going to sort of fill the general role of an illusionist. At least that's my interpretation of third edition.
That's good info. As I said, I don't know. I haven't played third edition, so that sounds good to me. Now, with all of that said, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about what a bard is. Now, in terms of things people like and dislike, I mean, there's some classes like the ranger, for example, where people will have tons and tons of conversations about what people like about rangers, what they dislike, mostly what they dislike. But I feel like you don't see that as much with bards. Is there anything that really jumps out to you about what people like? It's just, we'll even say strictly mechanically speaking, of what people like about the bard in 5th edition.
They like that bardic inspiration breaks bounded accuracy. They like the fact that it's a full caster. They like the fact that you can get magical secrets and choose from any class of spell. And they like the fact that the subclass features are really juicy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that summarizes it great.
I think it's kind of hit or miss though. It's kind of a love-hate for play. I think everybody loves to have a bard in their party because a lot of that's around support. I think a lot of people don't like the idea of playing a bard because it is just support, and a lot of people don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
They want the big damage, or they want to be tanky and meaty and right up in things, and bards aren't that. In a lot of ways, I think they could be one of the most dangerous players on a battlefield in 5th edition.
Oh, definitely.
But it's more about the manipulation, the making it really hard for the enemies or bolstering their allies so well, where with the presence of the bard can make or break the fight and exactly how they play. But it's subtle, it's manipulation, it's support, and I think that does turn a lot of people off of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to have a player who wants to do that, right? You have to have a player who has their play experience completely filled if they're playing that support role. Like, if I'm taking my turn and I'm helping my allies out, and that makes me happy, I should be a bard.
Yep. And yeah, that's me a lot of times. I like to be the support. I like to be like the one that has the clutch spell and the big moment that turns the tides.
Yeah, it wasn't I think only recently, is obviously not a bard, but I played an artificer that was specifically with the intent of being a support class. And I still remember like the very first combat we had, I was like, oh, I'm going to swing, I'm going to do some damage. And I was like, oh, I suck at this. Like I missed one of my attacks and then boom, that's just the end of my turn. And once I realized like, oh, let me lean into the actual support aspect, how I built this character. It's a really good time being able to kind of go back in your head through the entire fight and being like, oh yeah, that's right, they hit because of my bardic inspiration, or because I hasted them, they had an additional attack, or because they had this, just kind of going back through your head of everything that you did that affected the fight is honestly really satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think by the Bard's spell list backs it up as well, because there's very little damage spells on the Bard list.
Yeah, I mean, even look at their only damage cantrip, I think, is Vicious Mockery.
Is that the only one? I was just about to pull them up.
Yeah, and that's like the classic. That's the cantrip for bards. Like it's the one that you're expected to
Yeah,
take.
only bards get it. Yeah, it's a fun one.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fun, but it does what, a D4 damage?
Yeah, it's a D4,
It's
and that imposes disadvantage on their next attack.
which is
They
definitely the
get
most important
Thunderclap.
thing.
Yeah, so Thunderclap and Vicious Mockery are their 2 damage cantrips. In terms of damage spells,
I mean, imposing.
there's like indirect damage. What are you gonna say?
I was saying, like, again, right? It's imposing disadvantage is huge, right? That's possibly negating 10 points of damage, which is much better than having a slightly bigger damage die on the spell. And again, it fits the role what the bard's supposed to do, be that support class. I mean, there's we could have a conversation about game design theories, like, okay, should this one particular story be tied to this one particular play style, right? But the way it's presented here, that's the way it works. If you want to be a support class, you got to be the one who's also doing the music and doing the fun. Well, I guess you could be a tragic bard. I guess you could just recite like eulogies the whole time, like really depressing free blank verse poem.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I love about it. I mean, I think that's something I've seen a lot recently is people exploring that idea of like, well, okay, if performance is really the only anchor we have here, there's a lot you can do with that. I mean, you can be the sad emo boy reading poetry, and that can be a bard too.
But still, it's worth pointing out that goes against type in a way that a fighter would never do, right?
Right.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
That I mean that you could be both the happy-go-lucky fighter, or you could also be the droll, depressive fighter. And both of those sort of fit the idea of, okay, I'm going to be the one in the front line, dealing the most damage, taking the most hits.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Where a bard, you do kind of get that immediate imagery of them being more plucky, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse my pun. So with that, let's kind of just jump into the actual class, take a look at that, and starting with the player's handbook. All right, so yeah, the Bard itself, I mean, is definitely a class that hasn't been through major revisions I guess throughout the course of 5e. The subclasses have generally stayed pretty consistent with the themes. There is Bardic Inspiration, which is, as Zip mentioned, one of the things people love about the Bard, and that's your ability to manipulate rolls. Generally, it's given as a bonus action if it's going to be in combat, and the basics of it is that you can just improve any ability check, saving throw,
attack roll. Yeah.
Those are the 3, right? Ability check, attack roll, saving throw.
For the base Bardic Inspiration,
yeah. And then, of course, your subclass, whichever you have, allows you to, if you're a lore bard, which we'll get to, you can use cutting words, and that subtracts from a enemy's attack roll. And each subclass gets its own kind of unique one. But, it's not like we've seen any like major changes to that formula. And unlike, the Ranger, which has had a bunch of optional class features, or
and some really, really powerful subclasses that came out after the player's handbook to make up for the weak core. Now, Wizards of the Coast knew the Bard was solid. They did it. They just stayed the course. Okay, I was gonna say there's no bad bards, but we'll get to that. I think in Xanathar there's a bad bard or two, but.
There's definitely some argument to be made about Valor Bards too, which I'm sure we'll get to. But as for base Bard features, I mean, obviously Bardic Inspiration's a big one. But otherwise, I mean, we've talked about them being Jack of all trades. They literally have an ability called Jack of all trades that allows them to get half their proficiency bonus towards any skills they are not proficient in, which just right away makes them a skill monkey.
Oh, no. It's more powerful than that. It's not any skill they're not proficient in. It's any ability check, which includes things like initiative, includes things like counterspell.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. Initiative, I always remember. Counterspell, I always forget.
Right.
Which I think we'll circle back to the counterspell in a second.
Yeah. But then I say the only thing that I look at from the base class of the Bard that I'm like, that's not too great, is Counter Charm, which is their 6th level ability, where they can spend an entire action to give advantage on friendly creatures within 30 feet on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. And that's...
It's a crappy ability. I don't even know if it's worth that much time talking. That's like their one super weak one.
Yeah, it's one of those
the
things that
core.
it's a legacy ability, right? They have to put something like that in there because that's what Bards in all the previous editions that had something to do. And again, it sort of fits the idea of what your, the musician is going to do for you. They're going to rally the troops, right? And so something like that has to be in there. But yeah, I think it's a bad ability.
Yeah.
Mechanically, it's not worth it.
No, it's not worth it. I don't think I've ever honestly seen it used at a table I've played. And I am just curious to see, like, if the Bard was re-released today, what that ability would look like. Because I feel like, anybody after this many years in 5th edition would look at that and just say, that's not good. We don't need that.
So it's worth noting that the Bard only got 2 versions of the public playtest, right? They released it in the 9th playtest. It's either the 9th or the 10th playtest packet. They gave like a version of a half caster Bard, and then they released it in the alpha draft and said, okay, here's the regular Bard. And that's all we got for chances to get feedback. And during that change, they switched it from the half caster to the full caster. I think they left pretty much everything else alone.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I was gonna say, only 2 option chances and only 1 real stinker got through. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Song of Rest is middling. 1 extra D6 is a little weak. I think it could be made a little stronger, but they don't really need the boost, so that's fine.
Yeah. So something else that's sort of interesting about the Bard, mechanically how it's designed, is that it switches, or at least halfway through, it starts picking up a lot more power from its short rests. Right, it's a full caster. So you think,
5th.
Yep, you're expecting your full caster. You're gonna get most things your long rest recharge, but then you give you Song of Rest, which is a nice boost if everyone around you is short resting, and then at 5th level you get all your Bardic inspiration back at a short rest instead of a long one, and so that's sort of an interesting sort of change of pace in the Bard as you level, which I don't really think we see a lot of in other classes.
Yeah, that one's always stuck out as me too, because that's huge. Because you feel really limited on your Bardic Inspirations without that. Because you use them a lot. Like, I like to hand them out.
You should be.
Like candy. It's like, you should be. It's what your thing is. Or you use them as part of your class feature, like cutting words. If you're a lore bard, use them all the time. And then all of a sudden you're out for the adventure day, because I'm blanking. How many do you get?
Equal to your proficiency?
Charisma modifier.
Charisma, that was it.
This is early. It's not proficiency. Yeah. Charisma modifier. Yeah. So at level 1, you got 3 of these. At level 4, then you can get 4 of them. Per long rest is pretty weak. Then 4 per short rest is great.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough.
Yeah, it is though. It's a huge power jump just even at 5th level.
And that's what 5th level is in 5th edition. It's the power jump. Very much so. There's a huge difference between 4th and 5th.
Yeah, but a lot of classes, though I'm not saying nobody else gets other, like clerics get other stuff at 5th level, but a big part of it is like you can cast 3rd level spells now. And like that alone is the power jump for like a wizard.
Right. And so bards get that as well, but they don't have the breadth of a spell as, say, a wizard does. Pretty much all marshals get their extra attack then, which really opens it up. And then bards get, this. Then they also could get extra attack at 6th, depending on their subclass. So.
Yeah, they get
a lot.
And at 5th level, they also get their 3rd level spells because they're a full caster.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Going back, something that we forgot to mention about their skills is not only do they get deckable trades, they get access to the entire skill list when they're picking their skills when they join the Bard class.
Right.
And
good
they
point.
get 3
you
of
choose
them.
any 3.
Right.
It's crazy.
And they get expertise.
If you go lower bard, yeah, and if you go low bard, you get another 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something.
They're great at skills. They compete with rogues. I think rogues get them beat later on because of reliable talent. But that's about it. But in terms of like the number of skills had, bards. Oh no, sorry, rogues get 4 skills, but it's from a more limited list.
Mm-hmm. So that's something right there. They get so in 2 parts of the game where you're really trying to. With sort of a good measure of your power, right? A full caster and sort of a master of the skill check. And you can even manipulate that even further with the Bardic Inspiration. Not for you, but for everyone else around you, right? Everyone else gets better at skill checks because you're also good at skill checks. It's kind of cool.
And you still get a higher hit die than some of your other full casters, wizards and sorcerers. Right. And you can wear armor.
Yeah, just light armor right out the bat. And certain subclasses will give you medium. And a shield.
All right, so this
They're
is
so
so there is one thing that I think is kind of annoying about bards, right? And this is when we go into the magical secrets, right? Because I feel you have to get counterspell. I don't feel there's much of an
Yeah.
option except for going to wizard and getting counterspell. Like, feel free to make an argument otherwise, but I think that's
I've definitely skipped counterspell. Or like I said, I've played a lot of bards, and my first bards, if we got to that, I was often lower bards. Like when we got to 6, I would take counterspell. And just to cover real quick, in case someone's not familiar, magical secrets is they get all bards get it at 10th, and then another pick at 14th and 18th. Lower bards get it at 6, and they can pick 2 spells from any class in the game as long as they meet their level requirement. So that's also like another huge major feature. Comes online later on in level, another huge power jump for bards, and really speaks into that jack of all trades, kind of this huge just versatility to them. But yeah, specifically with counterspell, I find it's really campaign specific on what you're fighting, because there's a lot of monsters with magical abilities that are technically not spells. And there's definitely been a lot of times I was like, all right, I'm going to pick counterspell, and end up not being able to use it a lot because it's specifically spells.
That's true. You know, hugely DM dependent, right? You could have a game where you don't have a lot of enemy spellcasters, but I think I'm assuming they were running, like, you know, pretty vanilla D&D, and I think most of the published adventures, most of the major foes have spellcasting trait. And so the ability to do that, not only, you know, grab counterspell, which is, you know, the best reaction in the game, but to do so with your jack of all trades, which makes you better at counterspelling than anybody else. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Talk about that interaction more, because I know you mentioned it earlier. I mean, that's just the fact that when you get to make an ability check on countering the spell, and so that's your charisma modifier plus. Do you add proficiency in that case? Yes, you would, and then. Or no, you don't, because you normally don't get your proficiency.
Yes,
bonus
but because you are a jack of all trades, you're
trades.
adding half your proficiency bonus to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's obviously much better. Talking about getting +7 or so at regular levels of play is fantastic for counterspell. When you really don't generally need to get that high.
Yeah, the DC is 10 plus the spell level if it's over 3rd. So 14, 15, 16 plus 7's really good.
Yeah. And so I think that also, I think we can't help but mention that this was really brought to focus with Sam Riegel in Critical Role, right? His bard, that's, you know, the scandal, the most, you know, watched one, obviously, on any stream. Counterspells constantly.
And probably did horrible things for the horny bard image.
Yes. You know, of course, they're playing archetypes. Super horny bard, and like even see it in the show. And yeah, even in the cartoon, you see him, you know, casting counterspell, something that's the equivalent of counterspell, like stopping an enemy spellcaster. And so I think that has sort of got locked in now to what the bard does in the fiction. I think that we have hit a new shift, that this is now part of our popular imagination of what a bard does.
Right. In the same way, so Ellie, you were saying that, like, yes, you've played bards that don't have counterspell, perfectly valid, but I think it's also safe to assume that that is against what you'd expect. It's almost like a warlock not taking Eldritch Blast. Yes, you can build a warlock without Eldritch Blast. It's not built into the class features itself, but when the opportunity arises, you're really good at it. You're just good at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strong pick, and I do... Yeah, relating it to Eldritch Blast is a good comparison, because it kind of does feel like you're almost missing something if you're not taking it, and that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I mean, that's the oddity, right? You've got Counter Charm as a bard, which we've all decided sucks because it, sucks. You know what would make it suck a little bit less? If it behaved like Counterspell. It feels like
you
they
can do
should
it as
have
a
it,
reaction to someone getting charmed or frightened. Boom.
Hey, that's in my notes. I'm scratching that off now. Thank you.
That would be a good change.
Yes, Counter Charm is a reaction for one specific person. It just seems like all that you would need, and it would be fantastic.
All right, so what other changes would you make to the bard? Like, what do you want to see it look like going forward?
Not yet, though. I'm sure there's more. Don't get ahead of things. We got plenty of time.
I'm excited.
It's okay.
Yeah, we usually cover like kind of what it is now, and then through everything.
But with that, let's say I think we talked about lore bard a good amount. As I think what is needed to talk about though is valor, because valor was in the player's handbook and was one of the other subclasses, and I think generally fell pretty flat. I mean, this was the martial bard, and they released the College of Swords in the next book that basically usurped it as the martial bard, and I don't think I've really seen much valor bards since.
Right.
And that obviously is the imagery of a sword slinging bard, which in the same way, it's like I can't think of any reference in pop culture to a sword slinging bard, but it's in tabletops. So hey, there's some fiction for you,
Leliana in Dragon Age,
which
Federal
is
series.
kind of referenced from TTRPGs. But you're right. It is
sure, but I mean
yeah.
that came out before. I'm fairly certain that came out before 5th edition.
And I think
Before
Dragon Age
5th?
Origins.
Oh,
Yeah.
but bards
this is
almost
valid,
originally
yeah.
start with, like, again, going back to 1st edition, the concept that you need to be a fighter and a rogue. They've always had that idea of, I guess, having some martial capabilities.
Yeah, I think a lot of times this was seen as ranged, a hand crossbow, a dagger to throw, kind of minor stuff when needed. And the Valor Bard just kind of takes it to another level. I don't hate the roleplay of it, the idea of it. I do agree the execution of the Valor Bard is not great. It makes for an okay multi-class. I successfully did that with the rogue, so I was a rogue with some charisma-based spell casting and medium armor and shields and all martial weapons.
And extra attack and sneak attack. That's nice.
Yep, extra attack at 6. Yep.
And that's
So
the real
it was good
problem,
for that.
right? Is that the extra attack competes with your spellcasting action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do they fix that in the Swords Bard?
I think a lot of it was, I mean, there was the oddity of your bonus proficiencies gave you medium armor, shields, and a martial weapon, and the shields and a martial weapon are kind of difficult when you also need a spellcasting focus, because you can't use your sword or your shield as a spellcasting focus without Warcaster. And swords fix that by allowing you to use your martial weapon as your spellcasting focus, which was one really big, I mean, that just seemed like kind of an obvious change to me.
I just love that idea of having like the bard like wave his rapier around like a conductor's baton.
I love it.
Yeah. They also get a fighting style, dueling or 2-weapon fighting, so it's limited, but they do get that. And then the blade flourishes are just cool. So the Valor Bard's use of Bardic Inspiration is just a combat inspiration. It just increases what it can be used for, so that it can be added to damage rolls made with weapons attacks, which in my mind is the worst use of it. It's like I'd rather be used on an attack roll to see if you're going to hit or not, or against a save. The base one doesn't work against saves, does it?
Base one works increasing saves. Yeah, you can increase your saving throw.
Yeah. Okay, I knew that.
I know.
Yeah.
I always mix that up too.
For some, I don't know why. Yeah, there's just too many little nuances with it's for.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, in this bard you can add a D8 to their persuasion roll if it's May. If it's May, you can do that.
Right. Yeah. So adding a 1d6 to an attack roll is usually not as good as a 1d6 to. I'm sorry, a 1d6 to damage is usually not as good as a 1d6 to your attack roll, or against a save, you really need a pass. It's usually worth saving it. They can use it as a reaction to add AC against one attack. That's cool. I'll give them that. That's great. So it's like a one okay use. It just kind of makes it slightly better. Where the sword bards get the blade flourishes, where when they actually hit, they can expend a Bardic Inspiration to do different things like a defensive flourish, slashing, or a mobile flourish. Where they like hit multiple things or do additional damage based on the Bardic Inspiration and add AC until the start of your next turn, or be able to like push them away and move without opportunity attacks. Stuff like that. It really feels more martial. Makes them feel like, oh, okay, they're actually good with a blade. We're not just saying they're proficient with it.
Yeah, it was kind of a merging of the Battle Master and Bard.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and the flavor's nice too, calling it a flourish. That really that works.
Yes. Yeah, I think it more so than just the Valor Bard's kind of mechanical falling flatness. I think that even just the flavor of it just doesn't really, it doesn't sing to me. Again, just horrible puns here. I'm sorry. But the College of Swords, as you said, it gives great imagery. That idea of them kind of their sword work is a performance. And that, I mean, it's of course brings up imagery.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of the performance aspect. Maybe there's nothing auditory about it, auditory,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it's not. It's just like it's their steps in battle. It's how they move and hold themselves in their sword. It is their performance that they pull the magic from the power of creation. They're not singing, they're not reciting poetry or doing stirring speeches. It's their physical movement, and I think the sword bard can embody that really well.
Yeah, the best twerkers around. That's the real magic.
Of course. That's
Yep, that's what I meant.
You think that's crass?
In terms of the other subclasses added in Xanathars, we have the College of Glamour, which is kind of a focus on the Fey magic aspect and really digs into that performing idea, which I feel like when I first thought of a bard and saw the College of Glamour, I was like, well, that's what a bard is. It's already done. We got it. But then, looking at the Lore Bard, the College of Valor as like those original Player's Handbook subclasses, the College of Glamour really just takes the bard and amplifies that even more. And I do appreciate subclasses that fall into that domain where it's like, I'm the main class, but more of it.
It's that one aspect of the bard. It ignores the fighting, the martial aspects. It's so when I said there's like one kind of bad bard subclass, in my mind it's this one. I don't think it's that great. I think mechanically it's kind of weak and uninteresting. It's a lot of middling abilities, and it also brings up to me some kind of weird moral things because it's all about the magical manipulation of those around you to force them to do what you want, and it's like that kind of glamour stuff within D&D never sits right. And it's like other things could do it. There's glamour spells, charm person, and things like that, and it always feels a little weird to me. Like I can't bring myself to play a good aligned character who uses that stuff. And because of that, I'm not a huge fan of the Glamour Bard. And like I said, it was also just kind of mechanically middling compared to the other ones. And then the Eloquence Bard and Mythic Odyssey Theros, which we'll get to in a little bit, I think kind of blows it out of the water in that same space without being like magically taking over people.
And I'm okay with that too, because yes, yeah. I agree. I do like the I guess attempt, but yes, looking past the third level abilities is like, oh right, yeah, that is the rest of it. I mean, being able to cast command without expending a spell slot, which is, I don't really love this command spell, regardless of moral implications. I just don't think it's that amazing. But casting as a bonus action on each of your turns without expending a spell slot is something, but I guess that makes the command spell okay. But overall, yeah. It's kind of middling.
Yeah, I mean, the Glamour Bard is also supposed to be like the Fey Bard too, right? Like supposed to be like extra in that way.
Yeah. They craft in their vibrant realm of the Feywild.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, a way to think of this is like overwhelming the target with emotion, which I think is you were channeling that sort of spirit of the Fey into them, which I think serves like a legitimate story purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess one way that I could think of a way that makes it a little less crappy is in the Mistborn series, which I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that, but not entirely important. It's a book by Brandon Sanderson, and in that there is a totally different magic system, but there is a way to manipulate emotions where the specific method is enhancing emotions already there. And so people will do it, and it's a matter of taking what this person's already feeling. So you're in combat, for example, and there's obviously going to be some tension, some fear, and it's heightening that fear and making them even more afraid, so that way they feel compelled to run. So it's less about making the people feel differently than they're feeling, and more just like either dampening emotions that you don't want them to be feeling, or heightening emotions you do want them to be feeling. And in the story, there's like a specific question of like, well, isn't that absolutely horrible? You're manipulating people. It's like, well, so is conversation. Like if I have a persuasive conversation and I get you to agree with me, then I did the exact same thing. I just have an extra ability for it. How you take that up to you, but it's one way to look at it.
And now we're engaging with this game in a way that makes us reflect on our real world and our human condition, which is elevating this, into art, which is the entire purpose.
entirely. Anything around College of Whispers? That's the other one in Xanathar's.
That's the
And that's
ninja
like kind of
one,
the
right?
yeah. You can like you can do mind
that's
smites.
that's the ultimate spy one. That's the one if you want to play like the spy bard, the one who infiltrates and like blends in for years and years and years to manipulate things behind the scenes. It's the College of Whispers, which I think is really cool. And they
Yeah,
have one of the coolest abilities, I think, Mantle of Whispers, where when someone dies within 30 feet of you, you steal their shadow and assume their form and gain their base memories.
That's super cool.
yeah. I played a
Yeah.
College of Whispers assassin rogue multiclass for like a very short amount of time, and I ended up leaving the campaign after a little bit. But I do remember that DM was definitely not ready for. I told them, I tried to warn them. I was like, I'm going to be very good in combat. I'm going to do a lot of damage when I want to, and I still just don't think they were ready. That wasn't the main reason I left, but it was definitely on the list. I was like, okay, I'm in the wrong type of game. I do not want to ruin this for other people.
All right, so what I find interesting here about myself, the College of Whispers I'm good with, even though where the College of Glamour like kind of just weirds me out a little bit, gives me an uneasy feeling. But I don't actually know why the one doesn't the other, because the College of Whispers being able to like steal someone's form and learn their memories, like I mean that's ultimate easy manipulation for whatever you want, and it's like whatever. But the Glamour one, how that goes about it, just feels off.
Well, it's because in the real
I
world,
can't pinpoint why. Yeah.
in the real world, you don't go up and assassinate people on the daily basis. But in the real world, people are always trying to manipulate you, and you're always trying to persuade people to act in your interest. So the Glamour Bard hits a lot closer to the behavior in the real world that you're uncomfortable with, and so that's what's giving you pause when you play it.
That's a good, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's good. See, this is art.
Zipperon
That's
Disney
a really good
for
point.
advanced dungeon
That is.
masters.
Yeah. Great. Then say last is in Tasha's. It's the most recent
Nope,
one that
you
came.
missed one.
Oh, wait. Sorry. There is the one in between.
Yeah, Mythic
And
Odyssey of Theros came out after Xanathar's. And I know we're going through this a bit quicker than we have in the other retrospectives, but again, these just don't. The Bard is so solid and so good from the beginning. Each new iteration, each book release is not adding any drastic changes to it like it has for the other classes. There's just not as much to talk about unless we just deep dive every subclass, which is not what this is about. Yeah, the Bard College of Eloquence and Mythic Odyssey of Theros, I think, is really great. I think is a better way of handling that Glamour Bard, where it's the same sort of thing. It's about the persuasion, they're the silver tongued ones, but it's not about the glamour spells. It's not about charming them magically to force them to do things against their will. It's expertise in persuasion and deception and things like that.
And I think it fits the theme a lot better too. It fills a better niche in the story, right? That one who is going to be the heroic leader, or the one who can make the oration that's going to sway the minds of people, right? Get them to rally or to revolt.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about that the concept in other episodes ourselves about the idea of a party face, and it's like, well, you don't always need a party face, and everyone's going to talk, but this is a class where it's like, okay, no, you've got a party face. There's no way around it. I mean, the fact that at third level, when making a persuasion or deception check, you treat a D20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. I mean, at third level, like any time a persuasion check comes up, no, you're not going to have the artificer do it who's got a -1 charisma. It's just no.
Right. Yeah, and I think with the eloquence, I guess reminding myself what's in it here. It's why it lands better for me is most of all of it except for one feature is on inspiring others. The one that's not as unsettling words, and that ultimately is just you could use your expend a use of your bardic inspiration and roll that die, and then the creature subtracts that from one of the saving throws before the start of your next turn. The rest of it, it's about inspiring others. It's you could pass your bardic inspiration on, think like stuff like that. If they roll their bardic inspiration and it doesn't make them pass the fact, they get to still hold it. You can make anybody understand you. Things like that. It has a less creepy vibe of it, but fits the same space as Glamour.
And I really like how it's explicitly one that's not about music, right? It's a bard that's about using the power of speech to stir emotion instead. I forget, how does does the College of Whispers do that? It's hard to imagine like them like trying to like do 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 do.
And then they just stab the king.
Right? No, I think that's another one where the performance is more abstract. Their deception that the lie they live is their performance that they pull the power from. That sort of thing. I think that's
that's
another-
cool.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do kind of also like your idea too.
Yeah, I would actually say that the College of Whispers is almost the actor bard.
Yes.
They literally are putting on somebody else's face, and that would actually be probably a good way to make that your character, is that you're in a traveling troupe of actors, and that's your thing.
The
and
funny
then
thing about
stab
that though
people
is you're actually mostly acting as you're pretending to be a bard while being
instead of being like a rogue.
Yeah.
You're a rogue.
It's just a very
pretending to be
funny.
bard.
Yeah, it's a very sinister, funny class to me.
Yeah.
I like to maybe play with this like a kabuki theater,
Oh,
like one, like a whole collection of like masks or something.
yeah. That
And like
sounds
the way
pretty
that
cool.
you
Yeah.
sneak up is like very performative, like ballet like.
You're just like a street performer, and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting. Why are they? Oh, they're approaching me. Oh, I'm part of the show." And then just they die.
stab you.
Yeah, and everybody in the crowd is like, "Oh, wow, this show's really good. This is interesting."
Look at those effects. How'd they do that?
No, I was thinking more like the magic is like is encoded in like your special movements, right? Like that's why
Yes.
they dance that
Right.
way, because it gives them the
Right.
power of invisibility.
Definitely,
cool.
no, I
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, so
And
backtrack
then-
to the different bard.
No, that's okay. No, I'm just now imagining all the different basically dance moves before you then cast your spell. It's a cool thought.
It is, yeah.
What's next on the list? Because I know that College of
Okay.
Spirits is in there somewhere.
That was the most recent one. That came out after
Okay.
Tasha's.
Okay.
So yeah, after that was Tasha's.
With Tasha's just re-released Eloquence from
Mhm.
Mythic Odysseys of Theros, and then also added the College of Creation, which we have like a whole deep dive on. If you want to hear us get like super into the mechanics, it's a bit of a
Mhm.
weird class, but it's definitely unique.
Yeah, it's another one where you could say, "Oh, it's the Bardy Bard," because like they're the one they like in the base flavor text in 5th edition of a Bard. It talks about their magic comes from pulling it out of the Song of Creation, and that's what the Bard of Creation does. That's what
Right.
they College of Creation. They focus on that and just really hone in on it. So I guess maybe that's kind of a theme to tie every. I'm not going to try and force it on all of them, but a lot of the Bard subclasses, they look like, all right, Bards are these jack of all trades. So like, let's make a subclass for each trade and like
Right.
really
Take it to the
exemplify
extreme.
that. Yeah.
No, that's true, and we've talked about that with with our fighter retro recently, where we are long past the days of ever seeing a fighter that isn't magical in some way. Like we're seeing the Echo Knights, we see Rune Knights, we see all of these things where it's like, okay, that's just a magic fighter. You've made another
Right.
magic fighter, which good or bad, not important. But the Bard, we're this far in, and we're still seeing like niches that you could have probably done before, but you're getting a specific subclass for it. I mean, I could have made the College of Creation subclass and whatever character theme I had and just called it a lore bard. And, I probably would have had fun. But the fact that they're still able to take these kind of base ideas of what people consider a bard and extrapolate is really interesting.
Oh yeah, like
Absolutely.
I thought they was sort of like the Fantasia bard. That's what I've read it as. Like the wizard in Fantasia is not a wizard at all, but like he's conducting the orchestra and that's making all this
It's a
stuff
crazy
happen.
Bard. Yes.
Oh, man.
With the dancing and mops and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Brooms,
exactly. And
Yeah.
exactly. There's still plenty of room to fill really niche subclasses for the bard, and previous stuff to come. We got 3 of them in the book.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Just real quick. Like I said, since we do have that video, the College of Creation is about creation. It's ultimately like really trying to recreate in a small scale what the Song of Creation did. And so they do things like their bardic inspiration could like summon these motes in, and when somebody uses it, it has different effects, and then they can make mundane objects appear. They can animate things, and there's this whole stat block and stuff like that. So it's neat.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like
personally.
mechanically, it's like if it's middling again. It's another one of those middling ones. It's not terrible. I think I would need to see it in play to really get a good sense of it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things I'll say is that at this point of being, 7 years into D&D 5e, the idea that they can kind of be a little bit more experimental with some of the Bard subclasses, to me, is a good thing. They've got good ones. There's spaces there for if you just want the mechanically powerful one, but if you want to play something that's more creation focused, you can do it. It's here. I do think that's one that you need to talk to your DM with and make sure you're both on the same page, because there's a lot of
super
gray areas.
Yeah, this is the bard that would not fit in every campaign, because it turns you into a Disney character, right? If you want to be the Beauty and the Beast bard, like, oh, this wardrobe's going to come to life and fight for me. Like, this is what you do.
Right.
Like in every fight.
I think it is worth pointing out, all bards get the spell Animate Object.
That is
I
true.
think it's a 5th level spell, so it's higher. So, and I've used that to great effect. It's a really awesome spell.
Thematically,
that is true.
Similar,
that is
but
true.
In practice, it's always rocks. It's just a bunch of rocks.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the creation bar is just kind of one that just codifies it. Like, you get it earlier because it's a 5th level spell, so you don't get it till 9th. So like very much earlier on, they could kind of bring the stuff without spending a 5th level spell slot. So it definitely has its uses. But yeah, in my mind, it's because of Animate Object and it being such an awesome spell. I connect bards to that because it's a go-to pick for me if we get that high.
Isn't that it can be like a wizard spell though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay,
It's,
okay.
I have it up. Bard, sorcerer, wizard, artificer, and then forged only main cleric. So it's definitely not a bard only spell, but that's the only time I've seen it. Oddly enough.
Well, then that's just on you.
Yeah.
All right, last subclass.
I had a good segue,
yeah.
but then we got on a little tangent here. So back to what you said about like they're getting more experimental, and if talking about experimental bards in Van Richten Guides to Ravenloft, we now have the College of Spirits, and this is a weird one. When I said there's only one bad bard, I forgot about this one.
Yeah, another one that we have a full deep dive on. Whatever. I'm happy that this was created, and I think this is the era we're in right now. We're in the experimental bard phase because they're like, okay, we've made all of the solid classes. What do we do now? And here we go, College of Spirits, and it's it's an archetype I'd never thought of for a bard. The concept of somebody who is a fortune teller is the vibe you get, and being able to communicate with the dead and things of that nature. I mean, it's definitely out there.
It's a weird one. This is the one where we were saying a lot of the other subclasses, you can pick like an aspect of the core bard and then like takes it up to the next level. This one doesn't. It just does its own thing. And it's like, I kind of love it for that, but it is weird. It needs to be the right setting, the right campaign, the right player who's going to really play it up and take advantage of it.
I mean, they put
It's
it in a specialty book.
Right.
I was about to say, it is in a specialty book. I guess in Ravenloft, this would probably work super well.
Yes. And I
think having the seance class is cool. I like it.
It is really cool. I wish it was better in terms of just not even power. I just don't love the Tales from Beyond because it has randomness. I'm not big on randomness in classes just because I feel like you're always expecting it to be this like wide array of things that you're like, oh, one combat I'll have this and one day I'll have this. But in reality, you just, you roll the same thing 2 days in a row and you're like, oh, I didn't like that yesterday and I'm probably not going to like it again today.
I think Wild Magic Sorcerer in my mind is the only time they did that well because it was a D100 table.
Right.
Since then, no, it hasn't been done well.
So that's all of the subclasses. And
Bards up to present day. That's the most recent one. They definitely don't have as many subclasses as a lot of other ones, but again, they just don't need it. There's so much you could do with the base bard and so many directions you could go and different subclasses to pursue to get your little niche. And I'm happy with where they're at. I know we're definitely going to dive into what you did, Zip, about in your book. I mean, curious to see all the details of what's in there, because in my mind I'm thinking of this like, yeah, bards are great, I don't want to change it, but obviously there's always things can always be improved, added on, and so
Or even
I'm
just
excited for that discussion.
different. And I think that's
Yeah.
important too, because I mean, it obviously the Bard has been so many different things from its original inception. In terms of things that we'd like to see in the future for the Bard, I feel like I want to see more of this weirdness from Wizards of the Coast, and I'm definitely on board for more odd subclasses. I know that for anybody who's watched our College of Spirits episode, we absolutely just dunk all over this class in terms of mechanics, but I love the flavor and I wanted to love it so much. But
The abilities are kind of crap. They really
right,
are.
abilities just kind of crap. But in regards to like just oddness and trying very different things for this class, I think that this is the perfect experimental ground. And the only things that I really care about in like if they made a totally new Bard rework, literally all I want to see is counter charm made different. And my hot take is that I don't think that additional magical secrets should be able to get spells off of half caster lists. I don't like that they get Aura of Vitality, and I don't like that they get Steel Wind Strike. Those are for
Right, those are like
Rangers and
17th
Paladins.
level spells, yeah.
Aura
that
of
they could get
Vitality is
at
only 3rd
6th.
level, so it's
Right.
not crazy high, but it still is like it's a 9th level Paladin spell that Bards are able to get at 5th level, and it's like a super good healing spell that I feel like Paladins normally have to commit a lot into in order to get, but they just kind of can pick it up easy peasy.
Yeah. And it's 6, by the way. That's when they get the first magical secrets. But you
For
said
lore
5th,
Bards.
But yeah.
Oh, yes, you're right, because at 5th level they obviously can't.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to hear about, Zip, what you think about the Bard, and future, sure, but also, I guess what you've done an entire class rework, not to not beat around the bush here. So obviously, there's something about the Bard that either didn't connect with you in 5th edition, or you just wanted to do something else. So what? I'll start with that. What drove you to make a different Bard?
All right, so Galder's Gazetteer is a book for advanced players, right? I said, 5th edition's been out for a while. Let's see if we can do something different. So in the book, there are 4 new actions that characters can take. There are 7 new conditions that are added to the game, things like doomed or dulled or rested. And there are a bunch of martial options that are core into the game. Anyone who has the extra attack feature can get these martial actions, right? Instead of taking your extra attack, you do something different, like you drive your spear deeper, or you make it an expert snipe, something like that. And so if we're going to have all these new additions, like 4 new core actions, 7 new core conditions, let's see what else we can do. That was we're gonna need some class structures that can support this part of the expansion. Secondly, people always freaking rework the Ranger, right? Like there have been a bazillion Ranger reworks out there. Right, the Ranger class is okay. It's people like it. If just half of that creative energy was put into anything else, just imagine what we could have. So in this book, there are lots of variant classes. Right, took the idea of instead of just reworking the Ranger, let's try to see what else we can rework and we'll come up with. So my inspiration was let's go through the history of the Bard, think about what people have in their head of what a Bard should be, and see what else we can do with it. So the way these variant classes work is at the start, say, these are the features you do not get in the core class. So with this Bard, you are no longer getting Jack of all trades. You are no longer getting Song of Rest, and you are no longer getting Counter Charm in your core class.
This is where we ooh and ah get mad.
Whatever you want, right?
Ooh.
Yeah. So you're still getting your Bardic Inspiration. You are still getting your Expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're still getting your magical secrets. And you're still getting
you're
still getting the progression of your Bardic Inspiration. Like you get better at it, yada yada.
Right. And looking at those are the first 3 I'd be like, yeah, okay, those seem pretty reasonable to swap out. I mean, if you're going to. Obviously Counter Charm we've already talked about. Song of Rest we even said was like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, and so then
you made the Bard a half caster,
and that's the other thing, right? But I also took away half of your casting, right? You are no longer getting 9th level spells. All right, so what can we do here to make up for that, right? Because Bard casting earth shattering earthquakes and shifting the course of the universe is not something that everyone thinks of. So what else can we do here? The main thing here is we added something called Bardic Performance. So what a Bardic Performance is you can start playing a performance as an action, and it continues going for 10 minutes. And you can switch your performance as an action. And so what a performance is an ongoing effect that does not require concentration. And it's on a 10-minute recharge. So once your performance ends, you have to wait 10 minutes and you can start it up again. But it provides like continuous support to all of your party without you necessarily concentrating on a spell. So you can do your performance while casting something else that's requiring your concentration.
And I'm sure that it's kind of difficult to, we'll say, balance around, because with spells, a lot of times it's easy to say, it's like, well, but it's all you can concentrate on. So it's not that overpowered or whatever. I guess I'm sure there was a lot of thought that went into that idea of, how strong can we make these abilities without, stepping on concentration spells, or I guess concentration abilities, when you're basically concentrating on it.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But it's one of those rare situations where one character is going to be able to provide 2 buffs at the same time. And we'll get into what those performances look like cool. Just in a second.
I say if there's one class that could do that, the Bard being it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah. And so the cool thing is you can start your performance like right before you kick down the door, right? And so you spent your action doing that, and then you kick down the door, and then you can start fighting, and then use your full action to do other stuff. And so the other really big sort of bit of utility piece in this Bard is the 5th edition ability Martial Fanfare. All right, you're a half caster now, so I have to give you something else at 5th level to sort of push it up. And what Martial Fanfare does is when you take the help action, you can grant the advantage to an ally up to 60 feet away. And then you can make a weapon attack or cast a cantrip as part of the same action.
Okay.
All right. And so it routes through the health
cool.
action, so you're not going to worry about stacking with extra attack, but still allows you to do like a little bonus something on there too.
Man, doing that with Dissonant Whispers means you're basically able to give advantage on your side and disadvantage on the other side, potentially. I mean, every round, right? There's no limit to that. It definitely fits into the support role.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other really big utility piece is this idea of converse performance. So we talked about earlier in the podcast how Bards, being the counter magic, the counter speller, has sort of seeped into our popular imagination what Bards are. And so converse performance really leads into that. If you are engaged in a performance, or you can start one if you want, you can cast counterspell. And if you successfully counter the spell, your performance ends. And you get to add your proficiency bonus to the roll you make when doing counterspell. So you're hands down the best anti-magic person. And all that costs you is your performance, which is a regainable resource. And your performance only ends, you only lose the feature if the counterspell works. So it's a 0 risk thing, in other words.
Okay, and this is a once per long rest?
Yes, once per long rest, and then as you level up, you can do it twice at 11th level and then 3 times at 17th.
Okay, so like a free powerful counter spell.
Yeah.
With a performance ending. Okay.
Yep, so those are the 3 things that we gave you for taking away your 9th level spells. We gave you this superior form of counterspelling, which is sort of baked into your class identity, so it's not eating up your magical secrets anymore. We gave you Martial Fanfare, which is when you help you get a weapon attack or a cantrip. And we gave you overall these big performances, which we're going to dive into in just a second. Those are the big 3 things. Was that worth it to you folks? What do you think?
Yeah. It's cool. It's definitely a different take on the Bard. I get squirmy when I see other half casters in my mind. Oh, that's like the big thing of the Bard, but it's definitely some powerful stuff that you're adding back to it. So it's definitely I like the take, just a whole different new take on the class to kind of like focus in on certain aspects.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is better or necessarily like the only Bard that there should be. Like, a lot of people try to do with the Ranger. I'm trying to say this is a whole different way of thinking of it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah.
No, I mean, you said it earlier
I want to try it.
That idea of just like, if you need people to try new things and like try to make
Right.
new things. It doesn't always. Makes it sound like I'm talking about this quality, but I'm not. But that idea of like it doesn't need to be better, but the idea of like trying something new, you'll never have something better unless people are trying new things for these different classes and everything. And that's right off the gate though. I mean, I'm loving the idea of how support focused this feels. I do not. I mentioned earlier, I don't love bards being full casters because, oh my God, we just spent an hour talking about how good they are. Do they also need 9th level spells? But you know, this I know.
Please, their casting is what makes them good.
Yes, I say please don't dig into that too much.
Yeah.
But just the overall idea of the making them extra supporty in different ways it's a unique take. I like it.
All right, so and here are the two sort of like ribbon pieces, right? Something that I added in there that's not necessarily, sort of like a core power thing, but sort of like fits the role. The first one is this idea of folklore repertoire. So you remember we took away your jack of all trades ability. And so what folklore repertoire does is, do I know about this thing? You roll a D100, and if you roll under 3 times your bard level, you do know the thing. It might be contained in like a poem, or it's as though the legend lore spell went off for you.
This is one of the few things that 3.5 had that 5th doesn't, that bothers me. And I'm so glad to see it back. This is one of my favorite, just dumb, random abilities of any class. It's like, do I know this thing? And you get to roll, and the DM tells you yes or no.
Exactly. And so here's something I want to put on, because it's sort of a subtlety here. The difference between this having this ability and just saying, hey, do I know this thing? And the DM saying, okay, make an intelligence roll, or, make a religion roll or whatever, is this empowers the player. The DM cannot say, no, you don't know. It's beyond your ability to roll. To say, no, I do have a chance of knowing this thing. It's putting the player back in the focus of it, which I think is sort of cool for a bard. You do have a chance of knowing, some random lore, no matter what.
Right. They are the ones who would know esoteric lore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was the biggest disappointment for me in the lore bard, is there's no lore in the lore bard.
It's a great subclass.
Oh man, they should have gotten like automatic expertise in like one of the knowledge skills, like religion or arcana or something like that. And so the other minor tacked on piece to this bard is at 15th level you can cast glibness without expending a spell slot. Because it's a half caster, you would never get to cast glibness, and that's like sort of the bard spell. So I had to find a way to sort of hardwire it into the mechanics anyway, sort of get a backdoor in.
Right. Glibness being 8th level spell, hour duration. And when you roll a charisma check, you can replace your roll with a 15.
Yeah, and people can't tell if you're lying to them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, classic
That's
bard spell.
Yeah.
I had to find a way to give it to you.
Yep.
All right, so real fast, let's dive into what these performances look like. I know that the audience can't see. So I'm just gonna give you
some of them can. It depends.
If it's on YouTube, I'll put them up on the screen.
Excellent. All right, so when you start the bard, you get 2 performances, and then you gain more as you level up. I think you end up knowing like 5 or 6 of them. And the basic one is Call to Battle. When you perform Call to Battle, allies within 60 feet of you, including yourself, are inspired to fight with greater zeal. And they get to add a D4 when rolling damage to their melee or ranged attacks. And the damage goes up when you level up. It goes to D6 at 6th, the D8 at 9th, etc., ending at a D12 at 17th level. So all of your allies on all of their attacks are adding that D4 for damage. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
Yep. That's
cool. That's very bardy. Very kind of classic kind of.
Yeah. Much more useful. I mean, comparing it to like we're talking College of Valor, where it's like your entire bardic inspiration used to add on average like 3.5 damage. It's like, that's not really too interesting. But this, yes, adding an extra damage die is totally fine here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Over time, that adds a lot.
Yep. Every single turn, everyone's remembering, oh my gosh, I'm adding extra damage because the bard is performing. Because my ally's helping me out.
Your blessed damage.
Yep. See now, another one that sort of touches on, there you go, the ones that we were talking about, Inspire Resolve. Your words and music fill your companions with courage and the will to resist mind-altering effects. While using this performance, each friendly creature within 60 feet of you has advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. That's how we did the counter curse. As long as you're using this performance,
and a counter charm,
they automatically have advantage as long as they can hear you performing or see you performing.
And that's
great.
maybe something you don't know you need right from the start. Remind me, switching one of these performances, what does that take?
It's an action, right?
Okay.
Yep. So you can start a performance as an action. It lasts 10 minutes. You can switch anytime to a new performance as an action, and then once it ends, you have a 10-minute cool-off period before you can start a new one. So it's not limited to times per day. It's like per encounter limited.
Yeah, it's
right.
Okay.
This reminds me a lot of using the hunting horn in Monster Hunter, which is anyone has. And no, I don't think. Have you played Monster Hunter Zipperon?
No.
That's fine. Okay, it's basically a giant horn that you swing around, and like if you pull off certain combos, you buff your allies for 30 seconds, a minute, something like that. And the entire idea is you're trying to like chain these combos and switch between them based on how the battle is going. So it kind of is fitting into this.
Yeah. So definitely. And so some of these other performances allow you to sort of cast versions of a spell, but a special version of the spell, or a spell with a twist on. Like you can do one that confuses your enemies, but you get to choose the condition of confusion. There's one where you cast anti-magic field, but the anti-magic field that is centered on you, you can move around with it.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. There's a dissipate performance, which gives you the spell magic. Again, we're really leaning into this. You're the anti-magic character in the group. It's sort of a new role for you in addition to being support. And just a few others I want to highlight here because I think they're fun. I think they're higher level ones. There's the enhanced presentation. Your master's showmanship causes your spells to have an enhanced effect. You can start this performance or switch to it as part of casting a Bard spell. When you use your enhanced presentation, if you cast a Bard spell by expanding a spell slot, you choose one style listed below to affect the spell. It's essentially meta magic. You can do an encore performance. If the spell has a duration of 1 minute, you can extend the duration to another one. You can do a mindful performance that can give a creature automatically a saves on the throw. You can do a projecting performance that makes your spell go longer, etc., etc. Sort of cool things like that. There's the stupendous improvisation, where you can just choose any spell 6th level or lower to cast. Like that's your performance. You decide this spell that's on my class list that I don't know, I'm still going to cast it anyway.
Oh, man.
Right? And then there's one called Fascinating Performance, which is really kind of fun. Everyone within 120 feet just has to look at you. They can't look away. Like if you hurt them or cast another spell or, you mess with them anyway, it ends. But as long as you're doing that, they just can't look away.
It's definitely useful.
That
and
have its uses.
Yeah. That almost seems more like an out of combat one, which, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's
right.
Always love when they have uses in and out of combat.
Yeah, so there's like a dozen, maybe 15 of these performances that you have for this bard. So you have lots of options to do things to affect the battlefield, buff your party. That does not eat away at your concentration.
Yeah,
you know what this looks like?
Mm-hmm.
This looks like the invocation list on Warlocks. And what have we all agreed as Dungeons and Dragons experts is the problem with almost every class in the game? It's that it's not a Warlock.
No, that's not specifically
that doesn't have
it.
invocations.
No, we came to that consensus last time, I'm pretty sure. But this...
I was going to bring that up.
It looks like a Warlock invocation list, and that's why I love it, to be honest.
Yeah. I was going to say, but for all our other retrospectives, like, and just in general throughout the 3 years of the show, we bring that up a lot, where things we would love to see are invocations modeled for other classes, and some things kind of do it, and here we have it for the Bard.
Yeah,
giving you because I love that.
Yeah, options to choose exactly what you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the that's the variant bard that I put in here. That's sort of my take of a different way we can sort of imagine this class. I think it hits a lot of the key aspects that we want. Right, they're performing, obviously. They have a bunch of cool knowledge. They have that folklore repertoire thing. And they have this anti-magic sort of counterspell. I'm going to mess up my enemy spellcasters because I can control the weave with my passion sort of thing, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also does a good job of giving the visual of them singing or playing or doing whatever their performance is throughout the entire battle at all times.
Yes, exactly. All right, and just
Yeah,
real quick, I
that's
just want
like
to sort
the
of
flavor. Like what we were saying, the flavor of the bard often falls flat because you cast a spell and you're like, all right, how's that bard? He's like, I did it with a lute. They did it with a lute.
Right.
Right.
It's the same thing, but more emphasis.
All right, and I guess we have time here. I sort of want to touch on the three subclasses that I put in here too. So we have a College of Fame Bard, which is, you're like a social media star bard, like people know who you are.
Okay.
It has this cool feature.
That's cool.
Hold on, I want to. It's actually called Influencer.
Jeez.
As an action, you can speak your name to a creature that shares a language with you, and magically try to influence them. They make a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, you have advantage on all charisma checks against them. So you tell this person, do you know who I am? And you say your name, and they're like so stunned by who you are that you have advantage on it. Like magically, like your name carries power, literally.
Well, that seems pretty fitting again for bards who have the college of, or not the College of Creation, sorry, tapping into the weave, so to speak. I mean, you could literally inject magic into your name. I like that.
The other ability is called Posse. It makes your allies better.
Of course, you gotta have your posse.
Yeah, if they roll a 1 or 2 on the Bardic Inspiration, they can re-roll the die. Just a fun name to have, Posse.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a College of the Playwright, which I think is kind of a cool bard. Like you write inspiring speeches.
When would a bard and playwright ever be associated together? That's ridiculous.
Right? Hello. 7 years in, folks. Come on.
Right.
Let's get this idea. See now? I want to read the flavor text here. By writing epic poems, heroic stories, cutting satires, and stirring oration, these bards unleash the magic of dramatic or comedic performances through the spoken word. So you write your speech down, and it essentially stores the bardic inspiration on that speech, and a creature can read it whenever they want to, not within that 10-minute time frame.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool. That's sort of their thing.
Very cool.
And the third subclass here is called the College of Spoons.
I was looking at that. Yeah.
All right.
So a bit of background on Galder's Gazetteer. It was crowdfunded, and it is about this wizard Galder, who is the NPC or the character of a boy named Lawrence, who sadly died of cancer. And so the book is framed as his wizard going to all these different worlds, collecting their stories. And so we had submitters, people who backed the Kickstarter, give us their ideas for classes. And this one came out with the idea of College of Spoons, and they gave no context for why it was called Spoons. And so here, sensitive content warning, I sort of interpreted as spoon is your erotic dancing ability. So this So this is the spoon who may or may not be a prostitute. And we can look at the art. It's like, a belly dancer, right? So you can look at it as like literally just their dancing.
A little spoon. And...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because the spoons with the tassels, they jingle when they dance. And so this bard, she can do an alluring dance that makes people have to look at them. She can do an emboldening dance that makes everyone like fight harder. They can do a feverish dance. You dance yourself into a wild frenzy of unbridled passion. If now the expense of your bridal inspiration dice and adds it to an attack or damage roll, you can also add half the result to your own roll of the same kind for the end of your next turn. So you get a buff yourself. They have the hypnotic sway. Folks can't look away. And then they have the burning temptation at 4th level. Your grace is irresistible, and your spoony mastery complete.
Everything worth it, this entire book, for that one sentence.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the sexy dancing bar, which I don't think we've had before, and it's kind of fun.
Did you take this back to the person who suggested that and show it to them? And you're just like, this is what your suggestion got us. Thank you.
They haven't commented angrily on my Twitter yet, so I guess it's okay. Again, it could be read just as, just a normal dancer, but you could also be read as a, mildly doing sex work, which is kind of, if you want to have that theme, here's the option for it.
Yeah.
I legitimately thought it was going to be spoons. Like,
just somebody just playing the spoons.
Yeah. Just playing with spoons.
No, we went a different direction.
Very.
Yeah, I do feel your subclasses do hit ones that have not been out yet in 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
The writer, the one where it's just like focused on their extreme fame, and then the dancer.
Yeah. Again, those are really clear bard niches, and I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen them yet, because they are a little less magical. They're not like, College of Glamour, College of Shadows. They rely on sort of this more subtle, Lord of the Rings, sorcery style magic.
Yeah, which is very fitting once you turn the class into a half caster as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
And those subclasses, as well as the entire class and many other classes, can be found in Galder's Gazetteers. And you said 100% of the proceeds go to the Cancer Research Institute?
Yeah, so far we've raised almost $15,000, I think.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we have links to all that in the description.
Definitely.
Both podcast and YouTube. Boy,
I think we're reaching the end, right?
Yeah, the Bard, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was very enlightening. Had a lot of fun here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining.
This was really great.
Really great. And as usual, if you want to support the show on our side, you can go to all of our social medias, Monsters Multiclass. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. And Zipperon, before I go into like our other random details, go ahead and plug your stuff. Go for it.
Yeah, again, check out my YouTube channel at Zipperon Disney for advanced Dungeon Master tips and really sort of zoning in on a bigger picture of what the game could be and what role-playing games could be. And again, if you like anything that we talked about, this is only one of 50 classes, a whole GM toolkit, and 2 adventures that are in this beautiful book, Galder's Gazetteer, available in hardcover or PDF on Drive-Thru RPG.
Awesome. And thank you as always to our patrons, Ed G, Muddlewaite, Brian H, Craig A, Isaac M, Jeff W, Luca L, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Sentinel D20, Adam A, and Rob K. You all are absolutely awesome. And definitely no sponsor for this episode. It's just go check out Gazetteer's Galder. I almost mixed it around. Go check out Galder's Gazetteer.
Yeah, and as always, thanks for watching.